What up, what up, what up? Bustas, how we doing today? Wanted to come to you guys at the start of the week. I know a lot of you guys, especially a lot of you guys, the Orange Theory crowd up in here, you got a big active day from what it sounded like as far as what your training program is calling for you. But last week I posted, or it might have been 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, whenever it was, I posted essentially a video regarding some soft tissue manual release via a lacrosse ball, a ball rolling out the feet and be able to see and kind of basically identifying, showing how the body is all connected. All right. Now, had some questions regarding that of, how do I increase my flexibility? How do I increase essentially my warm-up routine? Is it good to stretch pre and post and all the other, yet again, it's like stretching is basically all exercise is kind of like diet nonsense that gets thrown around, right? Like, is this good? Is this bad? Is this better? Is this worse? And so, yet again, the mission of this group, you guys, is to help kind of put things out there. And I think the other thing is, yet again, the sense and the frustration of the answer sometimes is of it depends, tends to get people riled up a little bit. So yet again, it depends. From my standpoint, you guys, what we always try to do with a lot of the athletes that we work with is, talking about this, had this conversation with several of our shifters yesterday regarding them preparing for exercise and their more intense regimen or longer regimen that they have on tap for today. And oftentimes it's a side of, well, I'm going to carb load the night before so I can really get an abundance of energy, even though I might have been undernourished for the last 3 weeks. All right. Now the body doesn't work that way. All right. Because we get that oftentimes, and it comes to that in the sense of flexibility, stretching, mobility work is, I haven't been really doing anything. I've been sitting at my desk for 2 weeks, a month, 7, 10 years. And now all of a sudden I'm going to turn into a yoga person and I'm going to stretch like there's never been a muscle stretch before in my life, right? And so what I want to help you guys understand is, yet again, big believers in what you do day in and day out of small incremental changes and wins adds up to big victories over time. Okay. So what I want to propose to you guys is not necessarily thinking like, okay, all of a sudden I go from 0 to 150%, but maybe you can go from 0 to 1%. 1% to 2%, and just little bitty increments at a time, okay? So when we're talking about muscle, all right, when we're talking about stretching, flexibility, okay, the way we like to look at it is kind of the same thing we look at the pillars of health, right? Like there's mental and emotional, physical and spiritual, right? Same thing comes when it comes to your body. There's flexibility, there's mobility, stability, there's strength balance, and essentially there's skill and essentially your workload and rest, all right? Now, when we're looking at these things is first we want to look at essentially is your flexibility. What is your joints or your body's ability to move through a passive range of motion, all right? So for instance, say can I bring my hand over my head and from the side, can you see my ear from the profile? And essentially, can I touch my bicep to my ear, okay? For that, as an assessment, because what we like to do is we would like to assess and not guess, is look at, okay, what is the body telling me what is going on? Right now, for myself, I possess adequate flexibility through my range of motion, okay? So for some of you guys, can you, more times than not, if you're laying on your back, can you bring your knee to your chest, okay? Now, if you can bring your knee to your chest, but all of a sudden I ask you to squat down and you can't get through that same range of motion through an active position, that's limited mobility, okay? So flexibility is passive range motion. Mobility is strength at end range motion, all right? So usually what we see on that is, there's a lot of different variables that go into this equation, right? So is it limited range of motion? Is there limited stability? Because the other thing that we want to incorporate in kind of going into a lot of you guys that are maybe going from trying to go from a walker or a power walker into a runner is if we don't possess proper stability, essentially your body's ability to know that it's safe and know that it's able to get essentially the joint angle to be in the right position and not worry about falling, Yet again, it might not be necessarily a relative ability of whether or not you can run, but more in the sense of whether or not your body's interpretation is that you're going to fall over and get hurt, all right? Because if the body doesn't believe that it's safe, it won't open the door. Same thing comes when it comes to nutrition. If there isn't good nourishment consistently coming through the system, it doesn't know that it can relinquish its stores and open the door. Your body does the same thing when it comes to physical movement, all right? So when it comes to flexibility, what I would always propose is, first off, look at the avenues in which you can promote better movement habits through, okay? Because the way you sit, oftentimes what I tend to see and experience from athletes is they come into the gym wanting to do X amount of work for an hour. They want to move well. They want to promote good conditioning. They want a good training session. They want these kind of things. But if outside the gym for 23 hours of the day, I'm in unideal breathing habits, I'm in unideal postures, I'm sitting down a lot, I'm in essentially positions that are going to landlock me into certain positions, what I do in 1 hour isn't necessarily going to offset what I do in 23 hours. So first off, it's no different than what we teach in our shift program, is everything has to come from a place of awareness. What are you doing all day long? What positions are you in? What is your breathing patterns? Yet again, that's the number one fundamental thing that you are doing 20,000 plus times a day that is going to promote your posture, your exhalation, your essential mindset, your emotional state, all those things, your digestion. That's going to be highly driven by how you breathe. If you sit at a desk, if your hips are locked in, if you're rounding your shoulders, all those things are going to promote this, okay? Now, one thing we try to do, especially for a lot of you guys that are, yet again, trying to, I think, walk or run or do these type of things, is when we're looking at essentially warming up, there's one thing that I've seen time and time again, and I don't care what level of athletics I've worked with, is the warm-up is the most probably underutilized thing that I've seen be part of anyone's training program. Personally, I like to think of the warm-up is essentially as an opportunity time to take advantage of the areas that maybe you don't get a lot of exposure to, right? Now, that's not meaning all of a sudden you have to turn it into a 30-minute yoga session before you start your training program. What I recommend on there, you guys, is, yet again, use your first 5 to 10 minutes of your day as an opportunity to get yourself going, all right? I really am trust me, I wasn't that person that got up in the morning. My story was, I'm not a morning person. You will never get me up. But once I allowed myself and made the decision to, every morning, I try to keep my circadian rhythm, because yet again, the more rhythmic we can keep ourselves in, the better your body's gonna know how to respond. But if I can keep my circadian rhythm and allow myself to get into the same pattern, yet again, for me, I wake up at 5 a.m. every single morning. I try to get at least 5 minutes of breathing, 5 to 10 minutes of moving and getting something in the system, okay? So essentially what we're looking for, you guys, if you can do that, if you can essentially get yourself ready so you don't all of a sudden have to be, oh my God, I am so stiff and I am so tight, and by halfway through your workout, finally you're warmed up and finally you're able to get those patterns moved in. Because I feel it for myself as I get older, that warm up does take a little bit more time because our tissues and all those things get really, really rigid. Yet again, if you're noticing just rolling your foot out onto a ball that is really, really sensitive, that's a sign that those tissues are not sliding and moving very well. And if we can promote those things, yet again, you won't need so much long extended warm-up periods of that. All right. Now, one thing we're looking for, you guys, as far as warming up, okay, the warm-up we want to look at in two fashions. All right. I look for it as essentially as a release, a restore, and recover. Okay. So first, what is our restriction, right? Do I need to release something? Do I have a big day of running? Do I have a big day of pressing? Do I have something going on? Okay. You know what? I have a big day of pressing and my shoulders are just locked in because I've been sitting at a desk, or I've been locked in and doing construction or whatever I've been doing. Okay, so we probably need to release the pecs, get ourselves in an active position, and so I need to set myself up, right? So I might stretch, roll out, mobilize my pecs. I might activate the opposing muscle group to that, because your muscles work in two forms. If I'm gonna contract my bicep, my tricep has to elongate, all right? Now, if my tricep is locked up or perhaps under under weak compared to the opposing muscle group, it's going to protect itself, but yet again, it's not going to allow my bicep to contract fully, and this is going to stop and say, hey, I don't have the control and the force to protect this, so I'm not going to allow you to move through that full range of motion, all right? So yet again, that could be a mobility restriction, but that could also be a strength imbalance restriction. So yet again, when we're talking about warm-up, it's a good time to take notice, right? Like, okay, I'm feeling this, Saturday was around, I was moving like a rock star. You know what? We went skiing, we went whatever. Monday comes around, you know what? My hips are really, really tight. I need to kind of take some more time from there. I was, breathing. I didn't drink enough water, whatever that may be. Take note and take basically inventory of what's going on. So that way you can address these things before you get on and go from 0 to 100 in your workout intensity. All right. Now what we're looking for is your muscles. Clock is always on point. Your muscles are kind of the same way as this rubber band is, okay? So when I go to essentially, if I'm holding a dumbbell or holding like a pull-up bar, and I go to extend and eventually stretch these muscles, my muscles are essentially doing the same thing of stretching. Well, the point of the warm-up is to help get this so it's not so rigid. Like if I put this out in my fridge and then all of a sudden go to like pull it, this band's probably not going to respond very well, and it's probably going to snap. Well, yet again, we want to create intramuscular warmth and temperature via the warm-up and get things promoted and get some blood flow, get that lymph moving, get all those things promoting, and get maybe the waste and the junk that might be restricted there moving out of the system, all right? Now, when we're looking for flexibility, if you're going through stretches and those type of things, what we always get on there is oftentimes people don't hold those stretches long enough. So at the end of your training, what we try to do when you guys are going through cool down, definitely make sure you get yourself cool down, because the faster you can go into recovery, the faster you go into rest and digest, okay? So yet again, for a lot of you guys that aren't having any sort of cool down or recovery process, and then all of a sudden you go to have a big meal, you might still be in a heightened state, and yet again, I'm moving blood to the working muscles and doing those things, so I'm not getting any blood inside my gut to get any sort of actual digestion and absorption, because that's the most important part. That's great, you may be eating these things, but if you're not actually absorbing them and distributing them in the manner in which we want to do, you're not going to get the best benefit out of it, okay? So the faster you can get into rest and digest, so that's not just stretching afterwards, but yet again, fundamental breathing patterns of breathing from your diaphragm, getting yourself out of essentially fight or flight and more into a parasympathetic state of relaxed and recovery, that will help. All right. Now, during that time frame, what we try to do is at least 90 to 60 seconds, or I'm sorry, 90 seconds to 2 minutes of holding a stretch. Because what we're doing is it takes your body. So like I said, if I'm going to stretch my bicep here, my tricep is going to contract. Okay, its job, there's a portion of the nerve, it's your nerve spindle that contracts and fires to protect this muscle from overstretching and essentially pulling. Well, if I'm trying to stretch this, but research shows it's usually about 75 to 90 seconds for that muscle spindle to like relax and turn off. Well, if I'm at this point, but I want to get to this point, but it's my tricep that's contracting and it's essentially that nerve ending that's not allowing that, I need adequate time to yet again send the message to the muscle that this side can relax, so this side can elongate and get the benefit of it. That same thing goes for your hips. Same thing goes for basically the same thing goes for all muscles. All right. But what the biggest thing, the research that has also come out that I really, really try to help people understand is when you're going through your training program. Okay, it's not always about how many reps you do. Right? Especially depending on where you are in the stimulus in which you're trying to provide, and also at the same time frame where you are in your journey, is if you're really trying to open up range of motion. Research shows that by adding in strength and length simultaneously, you actually increase the length of that muscle and actually are more adapted to keeping that range of motion up to 4 times more by just simply stretching out, right? So because what's happening there is I can stretch this out all day long. But if I don't teach, because yet again, what's the limiting factor there? Is it the length of the muscle, or is it the fact that my body doesn't feel safe to allow this to work in that range of motion? So if I create that range of motion, but now contract and set in the movement pattern of that muscle and that length, I'm laying down fabric of the nerves, the neurons, all those kind of things. So my body understands that, oh, not only can I operate through this range of motion, I can be strong through this range of motion, and I can increase this range of motion. All right. So yet again, it's also while you're doing your strength training and those type of things through control, through good range of motion, through good technique, is that you let yourself, those are also opportunities to increase your range of motion. But like I said, that's been shown to be upwards of 4 times more beneficial of actually keeping the range of motion after you work into that. All right. Now, for a lot of you guys, I want to one other thing as far as your warm-up goes, want to share something that that we've been implementing a lot with a lot of our athletes, whether they're field athletes, jumping athletes, running athletes, whatever that may be. And especially for a lot of you guys that experience a lot of knee, ankle, hip, low back pain, is especially when you're trying to maybe go from walking to running, is reverse that. Okay, so what I mean by that is if I'm running forward and that pounding on my ankles, my feet, my knees is just really uncomfortable. Well, oftentimes if I reverse that, I can work that in and I don't experience the pain and discomfort. Okay, so what I mean by that, all right, I'll show you something here. All right, so we incorporate this. I know a lot of you guys, where you go, there might be a treadmill, there might be those things. We use sleds oftentimes. So if you're at I think a lot of the commercial gyms nowadays have sleds and those type of things. But yet again, if you have a treadmill, or you can do, you can even just do this outside in the park or wherever you're at, is essentially it's walking backwards. All right, so what I'm doing here, all right, so essentially I'm walking backwards, okay? But if you stop me in this frame of me stepping back, what does this look like? All right, oftentimes what we hear so much is going downstairs, kneeling down to tie my shoes, running, potentially hiking, doing these type of things just destroys my knees. Well, if we oftentimes kind of go back and do the action in reverse, we don't experience the same amount of pain because I'm not putting the same amount of force and the same amount of contraction into that muscle. But what I can do there is I can teach the movement pattern from a less intense and less impactful movement, and I can create blood flow and I can create a movement pattern that's going to be beneficial. So for a lot of you guys, when it comes to your warm-up, one thing I would try to do is 3 to 5 minutes, hop on, let yourself start on a treadmill, put your butt kind of against the uprights of it, and walk backwards. For some of you guys, depending on where you're at, do it without the motor being on and actually allow yourself to get some strength and resistance of pressing that. That's a good way to get blood flow moving into the ankles. A lot of times when it comes to knee and ankle pain, it's actually the tib muscle in the front that actually is a little bit maybe lacking as far as strength and range of motion. So that will also help promote that and help you guys, yet again, go from walking to running. And if you're an avid runner, that will also help increase your efficiency and your longevity as a runner. So there's a lot goes into this, you guys, but especially when it comes to flexibility, we want to look at it not just, can you touch your toes? Can you maintain position and touch your toes? Can you maintain strength and range motion? Are you warming up and are you cooling down? Because all those things are going to improve that. But one thing that, like I said, is you can do passive stretching, you can do active stretching, but the big one that we tend to find as far as the most beneficial is lengthening and strengthening simultaneously, is contracting, relaxing, and getting those muscle fibers to understand, and getting, more importantly, your brain and the nervous system to understand that it's okay to operate at those end range motions. So this, yet again, went longer than I anticipated. Who would have thought? But if you have questions, you got feedback, if you got anything out of this, let me know. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for your time, y'all. Busters, have a great day. Catch you later.